The twin crimson suns of Kepler 186f cast long shadows across the battlefield, painting the rocky terrain in shades of blood and rust. Lieutenant Emma Reed lay among the debris of what had been her combat unit's last stand, her breath coming in shallow gasps as she pressed her hand against the plasma wound in her side. The battle had been swift and brutal, a routine patrol turned ambush by Kraxan forces that left her team scattered or dead. Through blurring vision, she watched the alien dust devils dance across the plain, stirring up the red soil that gave this world its nickname among human colonists, the Crimson Planet. Her combat suit systems had failed hours ago, leaving her exposed to the planet's thin, cold atmosphere. The emergency beacon was damaged in the firefight, its weak signal unlikely to reach any friendly forces in time. Emma's military training told her to keep fighting, to crawl toward the nearest ridge where she might find shelter, but her body refused to cooperate. The plasma bolt had done its work well, cauterizing the wound but cooking the tissue beneath. She could smell the sharp, acrid scent of burnt polymer from her damaged armor mixing with the metallic taste of blood in her mouth. As consciousness began to fade, her thoughts drifted to Earth, to the family she'd left behind to fight in this war. Her younger sister Olivia's tearful face at the spaceport, her father's proud but worried smile, her mother's final embrace. They'd believe she died a hero, defending humanity's interests in the outer colonies. The bitter truth was she'd die alone on this alien world, just another casualty in a conflict nobody fully understood. A shadow fell across her face, blocking out the harsh sunlight. Emma's combat instincts fired one last time as she forced her eyes open, expecting to see a scavenger creature drawn by the scent of blood. Instead, she found herself staring up at a Kraxan warrior, its massive form towering over her prone body. The alien was easily 8 feet tall, its iridescent scales shifting between deep purple and midnight blue in the fading light. 2 pairs of yellow eyes studied her with an intensity that made Emma's breath catch in her throat. She'd seen Kraxans before, but always through the targeting system of her rifle or in grainy reconnaissance footage. Never this close, never this personal. The warrior carried a ceremonial staff marked with clan symbols she didn't recognize, though the plasma rifle magnetically attached to its back was all too familiar. Emma waited for the killing blow, for the warrior to finish what its brethren had started. When it reached toward her, she closed her eyes, determined to face death with dignity. Instead of pain, she felt gentle pressure as the Kraxan's 4-fingered hand carefully probed her wound. Her eyes snapped open in surprise, meeting the warrior's gaze. There was something there she never expected to see in a Kraxan: concern, perhaps even compassion. "Be still, human," the warrior said in heavily accented English, its dual-toned voice resonating in her chest. "I am called Vorthak. You are badly wounded, but I can help if you will trust me." Emma tried to speak, to ask why a Kraxan would help an enemy soldier, but darkness was creeping in at the edges of her vision. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was Vorthak producing a medical kit marked with unfamiliar symbols, his movements careful and deliberate as he began to treat her wounds. As her awareness faded, Emma realized she had a choice to make: trust this unexpected savior, or resign herself to death on the battlefield. With her last conscious thought, she chose to live. The first thing Emma noticed when consciousness returned was the absence of pain. The searing agony in her side had dulled to a manageable ache. She lay on something soft, the air around her warm and humid, a stark contrast to the battlefield's bitter cold. Opening her eyes revealed a dimly lit chamber, its walls a mix of natural rock and advanced technology she didn't recognize. Vorthak sat cross-legged nearby, methodically cleaning his ceremonial staff. In the better lighting, Emma could see the intricate patterns carved into his scales, clan markings that told the story of his lineage and achievements. The warrior noticed her stirring and set aside his work. "Your wound heals well," he said, moving closer to check the bandages. "Our medicine works differently on human physiology, but your body accepts it." Emma tried to sit up, wincing at the stiffness in her muscles. "Why did you save me?" We're enemies. Vorthak's secondary eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture she would later learn indicated deep thought. The elders teach that all life is connected. Even enemies deserve mercy. He paused, mandibles clicking softly. And perhaps I grow tired of burying warriors on both sides. The admission surprised her. Everything in her military training painted the Kraxan as ruthless fighters who never showed weakness or doubt. Yet here was one speaking openly about the war's toll. I lost my clutch mate in the first years of fighting, Vorthak continued, offering her a container of water. The human's weapons tore through his armor like paper. I swore vengeance, hunted your kind with fury. But revenge brought no peace. Emma accepted the water, her throat tight with unexpected emotion. My best friend died in the Proxima Centauri campaign. Plasma bolt straight through her cockpit. I couldn't even recover her body. They sat in silence, two warriors from different worlds united by shared loss. Emma studied the chamber, noting the careful blend of military precision and personal touches, carved figurines, holographic star charts, and what appeared to be a small garden of bioluminescent plants. This was an ancient temple, Vorthak explained, following her gaze. My clan used it for meditation before the war. Now it serves as my sanctuary when I need solitude. He rose, moving to check various monitors. The human forces believe this region is haunted by hostile spirits. The superstition keeps them away. Emma laughed despite herself. That rumor started because of equipment malfunctions. Something in the local minerals interferes with our scanners. She hesitated, then added, "We're not supposed to know your people are spiritual. The briefings say you're purely militant. And we are taught humans destroy everything they touch, caring nothing for sacred places or ancient ways." Vorthak's primary eyes fixed on her. Perhaps both sides prefer comforting lies to uncomfortable truths. Over the next few hours, they shared more truths. Emma learned of Kraxan family structures, their complex relationship with technology, and their deep connection to the worlds they inhabited. In turn, she told Vorthak about Earth's diverse cultures, humanity's drive to explore, and their hopes for peaceful coexistence with other species. "Your wound requires 2 more days of treatment," Vorthak said as the chamber's lighting dimmed to simulate night. "Then we must move. This sanctuary will not remain secret forever." Emma nodded, already formulating plans. "There's a neutral outpost 3 days' journey south. If we can reach it, I can contact my people without triggering combat protocols. The path will be dangerous," Vorthak warned. "Rogue elements from both armies patrol the wastes. And the local wildlife grows bold during the dark season." "Then we'll face it together," Emma replied, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. "Unless you're worried about keeping up with an injured human?" Vorthak's scales rippled with amusement, their first shared joke. "Rest now, Lieutenant Reed. Tomorrow we begin planning our journey." As Emma drifted back to sleep, she realized something had fundamentally shifted. She no longer saw Vorthak as an alien warrior who had saved her life, but as a person who shared her desire for something beyond endless conflict. It wasn't much, but perhaps it was a start. The crimson dawn found Emma and Vorthak preparing for their journey. Her wound had healed enough to travel, though each movement still pulled at the newly formed scar tissue. Vorthak had modified a set of Kraxan armor for her, cutting down the larger pieces to fit her human frame while maintaining its critical protective elements. "The desert grows treacherous during dark season," Vorthak explained, checking their supplies. "The predators hunt in packs, drawn by the cold to anything warm-blooded." He handed her a plasma rifle, one specifically calibrated for human use. "This was recovered from a battlefield. It will serve you better than Kraxan weapons." Emma tested the rifle's weight, muscle memory kicking in as she checked its power cells and targeting systems. The familiar routine helped settle her nerves about what lay ahead. 3 days' journey through hostile territory, with threats from both nature and their own kinds. They set out as the second sun crested the horizon, keeping to the shadow of rocky ridges where their heat signatures would be harder to detect. Vorthak moved with surprising stealth for his size, each step carefully placed despite the heavy armor he wore. Emma found herself grateful for the military training that had drilled similar habits into her. The first challenge came at midday, when they encountered a pack of blade wolves, vicious predators with crystalline growths along their spines that could slice through armor. The creatures had cornered a wounded Kraxan scout, one wearing the markings of a rival clan to Vorthak's. "We should avoid this," Emma whispered, but Vorthak was already moving. With a warrior's cry that echoed off the canyon walls, he charged the pack. Emma swore under her breath and provided covering fire, her plasma bolts driving back the creatures while Vorthak reached the wounded scout. The fight was brief but intense. Working together, they drove off the blade wolves and stabilized the scout's injuries. The young Kraxan was initially hostile toward Emma, but Vorthak's presence and their shared effort in the rescue earned a grudging acceptance. "My clan will remember this debt," the scout said before departing toward his own lines. Perhaps not all humans are without honor. As they continued their journey, Emma and Vorthak encountered more evidence of the war's toll on the planet. Abandoned outposts, wreckage of vehicles from both sides, and the eerie silence of battlefields where nothing grew in the contaminated soil. They shared stories during their rest periods, filling the quiet with memories of their lives before the conflict. A dust storm forced them to shelter in a cave network as the second day bled into the third. The howling wind carried the sounds of distant fighting, a reminder that the war continued regardless of their small piece of peace. In the cave's darkness, they discussed the futility of the conflict, how neither side truly remembered what sparked the initial hostilities. "My grandfather spoke of trading with humans," Vorthak admitted. "Before the misunderstandings, before pride and fear poisoned both our peoples against each other." Emma checked her wound dressing, thinking of all the lives lost. Maybe it's not too late to remember those days. To find another way. They emerged from the caves to find the storm had shifted the landscape, forcing them to navigate by Vorthak's knowledge of ancient markers rather than modern maps. The delay meant they would reach the outpost after nightfall, when the risk of patrol encounters was highest. As the outpost's lights appeared on the horizon, Emma felt a mix of relief and apprehension. Soon she would return to her own people, but something told her the night's challenges were far from over. The sound of weapons fire in the distance confirmed her fears. "The outpost is under attack," Vorthak growled, his scales darkening with concern. "Your return home may not be as peaceful as we hoped." Emma chambered a round in her rifle, sharing a look with her unlikely companion. "Then we'll make it peaceful. Together." The twin suns set behind them as they moved toward the besieged outpost, two warriors from different worlds, united by a common purpose. The real test of their newfound trust lay ahead. The outpost lay under siege, caught between two opposing forces. Through their scopes, Emma and Vorthak observed rogue militants from both human and Kraxan armies attacking the neutral facility. The outpost's defensive shields flickered weakly, their power cells nearly depleted. "Those aren't regular military units," Emma noted, recognizing the mismatched armor and non-standard weapons. "War profiteers and deserters, taking advantage of the chaos." Vorthak's scales darkened with disgust. "They dishonor both our peoples. The outpost houses civilians, scientists who study this world's mysteries. They must be protected." They formulated a plan quickly. Emma would approach from the south, using her human signatures to get close to the human raiders. Vorthak would take the north, where the Kraxan deserters were attempting to breach the facility's walls. Emma moved through the shadows, her modified Kraxan armor allowing her to slip past the outpost's automated defenses. She reached the human raiders' position just as they were preparing explosive charges to breach the main gate. "Lieutenant Reed?" The lead raider recognized her. We thought you were dead in the ambush. Quick, help us crack this place open. Plenty of valuable tech inside. Emma raised her rifle. Step away from the gate. The raiders laughed until they saw her unwavering aim. Their leader's face darkened. You're with them now? Traitor. The firefight erupted instantly. Emma's superior training showed as she outmaneuvered the raiders, her shots precise and non-lethal where possible. Above, Vorthak engaged his own battle, his thunderous war cry echoing across the compound as he drove back the Kraxan deserters. Inside the outpost, Dr. Thomas Wilson coordinated the civilian evacuation while monitoring the external cameras. Look at this, he told his Kraxan colleague, Dr. Keck 6. They're working together. A human and a Kraxan, protecting us. The battle turned when Emma and Vorthak managed to restore power to the outpost's defensive systems. Caught between automated turrets and determined defenders, the raiders quickly lost their appetite for the fight. Those who could still walk retreated into the darkness, leaving behind their wounded. Emma found Vorthak treating injuries, human and Kraxan alike, in the outpost's medical bay. The sight of him carefully bandaging a human child's arm while explaining Kraxan healing techniques to fascinated medical staff struck her deeply. Dr. Wilson approached them later, as the outpost's systems were being restored. We've contacted both commands. They're sending representatives. He smiled tiredly. Your actions here, they're asking questions about how a human and Kraxan work together so effectively. Tell them the truth, Vorthak rumbled. That we chose to see beyond our differences. Emma nodded, watching the twin suns rise through the outpost's windows. Tell them it's time for a change. As medical ships approached from both sides, Emma and Vorthak stood together at the outpost's gate. They had drawn a line in the sand, not between their peoples, but between those who sought peace and those who would perpetuate war. The real challenge lay ahead, convincing others to cross that line with them. Military representatives arrived at the outpost within hours, a human major and a Kraxan war chief. Their initial hostility dissolved into curiosity as they witnessed Emma and Vorthak working seamlessly together to coordinate medical care and repairs. The human major examined footage from the battle. Lieutenant Reed's tactics combined with Kraxan armor modifications. And these combat formations, a perfect blend of both military doctrines. She turned to Emma. How? We learned to listen, Emma replied. To see beyond propaganda. The Kraxan aren't mindless warriors, and we aren't soulless destroyers. We're both capable of more. War Chief Kralvex studied Vorthak's cultural markings. You bear the signs of a truth-seeker, yet fight with a human. Explain. Our ancestors traded knowledge before war clouded our judgment, Vorthak answered. I chose to honor that wisdom. The conversation lasted through the night. Emma and Vorthak shared their experiences, from the battlefield rescue to their journey across the wasteland. Dr. Wilson and Dr. Keck 6 provided evidence of successful cooperation at the outpost, presenting years of joint research that had been overlooked in the fog of war. Word spread quickly through both commands. More officers arrived, then diplomatic representatives. The outpost transformed into an impromptu peace summit. Emma and Vorthak found themselves at the center, proof that cooperation was possible. 3 months later, they stood together on a new platform built at the outpost, now designated as the first official neutral zone. Behind them, human and Kraxan engineers worked jointly on reconstruction projects. Scientists from both species shared laboratories, combining their knowledge to heal the planet's war-scarred surface. The elders speak of destiny, Vorthak said, watching medical ships freely cross former battle lines. Perhaps ours was to break the cycle of misunderstanding. Emma smiled, touching the scar that had brought them together. Not just break it. Build something better. As the twin suns set, casting their crimson light across the changed landscape, human and Kraxan children played together in the outpost's newly planted gardens. Above them, the first joint patrol of human and Kraxan ships traced peaceful patterns across the darkening sky. The war wasn't over everywhere, but here, on this small piece of Kepler 186f, they had created something unprecedented: hope.